Um, anyway, uh, travel writing, and what is it? Uh, frankly, I don't know. I don't think a literary genre like this actually exists. I think it was actually invented in this country, which in general publishes too many book titles, 5 times as many book titles than the USA, appear every year. So being a writer here is, well, a very difficult plight, I can tell you. And probably just to separate, this bunch of writers from the others, the publishers and booksellers and literary agents invented this term, travel writing. Well, in America, you mostly find what we call travel literature and the travel memoirs. In some other countries, there is no such genre whatsoever. And I think, well, there is some sense in it. What is travel writing? You're either a writer or you're not a writer. You can travel sometimes, like, for example, was Chekhov a travel writer? Mark Twain, with his amazing books about Europe, first package tours to Europe. Chekhov with his trip to the island of Sakhalin. Uh, uh, Almost, Dickens, yeah, of course, Dickens, went to America, went to France, wrote beautiful books, particularly about France. I'm just actually reading this book now. So were they travel writers? I don't think so. They were writers first and foremost. And that sometimes they needed to travel to get new impressions, to prolong their lives probably as well. Uh, so this is what it is. So you have to be a writer, first of all. And whether you travel or not, it depends on what you really want to do at the given moment. Uh, what uh, so what does it mean being a writer? Being a writer means, first of all, uh, well, being an interesting person. And uh, I have to say that because you have to be able to share bits of your thinking, of your internal world, that are interesting, that are appealing. Uh, some people are trying to use travel as kind of a gimmick to make themselves more interesting. I mean, at my travel writing seminars, well, often people come up to me and say, look, I say, what do you want to write about? I want to write about my holidays, for example. They quite often say, they say, why do you want to write about your holidays? Do you think, the world needs another book about someone's holidays? Was there anything special about it? Well, they say, no, not really, nothing special, but I'd like to go there again for free and get some freebies and get nice flights and so on and so forth. So unfortunately, that's why travel writing becomes so popular, and that's why in the eyes of so many people, it is a kind of an easy way to survive, an easy way, uh, well, to get some freebies and so on and so forth. Nothing can be further from truth. I think this perverse attitude has something to do with the extreme popularity of books by my good friend Bill Bryson, because they read so easily, they're funny, and they used to inspire me. Many years ago when I lived in Australia, I was dreaming of becoming a travel writer myself. Uh, well, I met Bill Bryson in Melbourne about 30 years ago, and then we met in many places, in many other places in Tasmania, and I actually even visited him in Hanover, where he used to live in the United States before moving here. And he was a very kind, modest, and kind of accessible man until he became very famous. Uh, so when he became less accessible, but he would always say, basically, his travel writing, he was doing it just basically for fun because he was a professional editor. He worked at the Times newspaper for many years. He wrote a brilliant book about the English language and well, basically the American language and the differences between the two, and the manual for the editors. So he was extremely, he still is, intelligent literary person, and he decided to kind of put down his impression of his travels, and he was himself very surprised, but they resound in success. But that ease, with which this books read, it led to appearance of a new genre, which one literary critic called cheerful ledism. So there are quite a lot of young men and young women bumbling along the world, and taking the Mickey out of everything they see, basically, then putting it together and pretending that kind of travel writers or writers. Some of these books actually sell quite well. When they cannot really see enough, these people, they bring some props with them, like a fridge, for example, or I don't know, Einstein's brain, or like a pig. They're all real books. People travel to these things because they don't have well, enough kind of wit, enough brains, enough power in their eyes to see interesting things. So they have to bring the props with them, the cliches. It makes their task easier. So of course, all these books, even though some of them sell quite well, as I said, they have nothing to do with literature. And travel writing is like any other writing, is literature first and foremost. Uh, when people ask me what are the main qualities of becoming a travel writer, well, and I'll come to it a little bit later to what is required. Well, it's basically, I think there are two. The first one is having no sense of direction whatsoever. uh, because when you get lost, seriously lost, in a dangerous place, especially, then your eyes open up and you start seeing things, you start remembering things. It's all about observing, it's all about remembering, it's all about seeing uh, some interesting details in the places and in the people, that we think we all know. So when you get lost, well, seriously lost, you can try. It does really. You do open your eyes and you become if not a travel writer, then definitely a traveler. And secondly, if you want someone to become a traveler or a travel writer, log him up. That's what I'm saying. Just log him up, because well, traveling as such, and I can tell you as an expert, traveling as such is a product of the inherent sense of contradiction, embedded in our soul. Uh, Someone who is being kind of put in prison for some time, you let him out, and he would have this irrepressible urge to travel, almost unstoppable. I'm talking about myself here. I first, believe it or not, crossed the border of the Soviet Union, the world's biggest cage, at the tender age of 34, 34 years. Yeah. Until then, I haven't been out of the USSR. Well, I traveled as a journalist all over the huge country, 1/6 of the world's territory. But I don't think the size of the cage matters really. I mean, it can be the biggest cage in the world. It can be 1/6 of the world territory, but it's still a cage because it's, well, there are some kind of uncles at the borders, with the submachine guns, who tell you, no, you cannot go past this point because I say so, basically. So you feel imprisoned nevertheless. But I did fly, of course, all over the place as a journalist special correspondent of Crocodile magazine. I went many times, for example, to the Far East, and you fly for 12 hours from Moscow. Can you imagine where you will be if you fly for 10 hours? You'll be halfway to Australia, basically, if you fly from London. But there you're just in the same place, basically. Same paper, same queues in the shops, same drab faces. So basically, it didn't really feel very much like traveling. But I always had a secret since I was a little boy. Well, I was reading train timetables. I was looking at the maps, especially when I was kind of feeling unwell, and I wanted to feel unwell quite often because of that, not to go to school, but to sit at home and to look at my maps. And that armchair traveling was extremely rewarding to me. I really loved it, and I still do, despite the fact that I can go almost anywhere now. So again, this is this repressed desire to move around, to travel. That's another, I think, essential quality to become a travel writer or a travel journalist. Well, travel journalism here probably describes it better because, well, I don't mean guidebooks, because guidebook writing is totally different. It's not an art. It's maybe a craft, Well, a good craft, but still nothing to do with creativity. I would actually, as one of my colleagues once suggested, uh, collect all travel books, modern travel books, in one big pile and set them on fire, or use them as the guide to the places where you shouldn't go.